Agenda Kenya this week, Honorable Kabando wa Kabando, Member of Parliament Mukurweini, Assistant Minister, Youth and Sports. Helen Tombo, Chairman, Youth Enterprise Development Fund. Karen Wakoli, National Youth Leader, Board Member, NACADA. And last but not least, Miyu Barasa, Film Director and Screenwriter. Good evening and welcome to Agenda Kenya this week. I am Jason Nyantino. Tonight and for the next 8 weeks, we continue looking at the urgent long-term reforms in the National Accord's Agenda 4. Tonight's focus, the youth of this country. What is their role in national development? That is the big question. I've got a great audience with me here tonight. Our people from Mombasa, people from Nakuru, and of course Nairobians are here with us to discuss this important issue. And before we start off, let's reflect. According to the Ministry of Youth and Sports, 75% of Kenya's population comprises young people aged between 15 and 30 years. However, the UNDP statistics are slightly different. The UN body says that 56% of Kenyan population consists of youth aged between 15 and 35 years. The Ministry of Labour estimates unemployed youth to be at 1.9 million, majority of them aged between 15 and 24. On the other hand, the Ministry of Youth and Sports says nearly 2.5 million youths are unemployed. Statistics indicate that another 750,000 young people from educational institutions join the unemployed lot every year. The Waki report found out that youth unemployment was one of the key factors behind the post-election violence. Experts now warn that the number of unemployed youth could rise to 14 million in the next 7 years. The Ministry of Youth and Sports estimates that only 125,000 youth are absorbed into the formal employment annually. To address this challenge, the government came up with the multi-billion Youth Enterprise Development Fund in 2006. In March this year, the government also launched the Kazi kwa Vijana project to provide employment opportunities for the youth. This project is expected to create 300,000 jobs by August this year. The Grand Coalition government says this is a temporary measure to address unemployment among the youth for the next 6 months. Right, let's roll up our sleeves now. Our first question of the evening comes from David Muturi, who is a peer educator. David.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask, who is a youth? And on a personal grounds, can the Honorable explain, can the Honorable say he's a youth, being the Assistant Minister in the Ministry of Youth and Sports?
Thank you, Honorable Kabando. Everybody in Kenya is young.
Yes, thank you very much. Very good question. A youth is a person who is in the age of majority and below that 5 years of age, that between 18 and that 5. But for the
that is the Kenyan
Kenyan description position. That's universal. Mm-hmm. Somebody who is in the age of majority, 18 to that 5. Mm-hmm. However, in a wider context, we also include those who are 16, 17, those who are rolling out from secondary school. On the second aspect of your question is that I will not consider myself as a youth. I consider myself as youthful. I'm now 41 years of age, and for you to be a minister, you must be...
Could you just explain that, youthful? What does that mean?
I consider myself youthful because I've just rolled out from the limit of that 5. I'm now 6 years above that 5. I think I can qualify to be youthful by description of those I've interacted with. However,
That rings a bell, Honorable.
Yes.
I've seen 60-year-old politicians
yes,
masquerading as young people.
Yes.
They're telling us they are youthful, so
Yes.
they talk on behalf of the youth. Is that true? Are you in that category?
I think the most important thing here is to be progressive. One doesn't qualify to be a youth by presenting or advocating for youth issues. However, one can qualify to be youthful by engaging on positive agenda that will advantage, benefit, and improve the welfare of the young people.
And you believe you're doing that?
I believe I'm not only doing that, I'm doing it passionately, compassionately, and aggressively.
We're coming back to that. We're coming back to your track record. Eh? Helen, who is a youth?
I totally agree with what Mheshimiwa has said. And according to the Youth Fund, the youth is between 18 and 35. And we are able to get our identity cards when we are 18 years old. I work also for an international organization, which is Plan International, which recognizes that youth is also 18 to 35, but with the recognition that due to the rural areas where we are finding a lot of young people due to unemployment rate is increasingly going beyond the 35 age because majority are still not unemployed and still in their mother's homes. So you'll find in some African countries where the youth bracket is continuing to 40, but it's recognized globally that is 18 to 35, whereas some countries recognize it as 24 years old to 30 years old.
So somebody who is over 35 years or 40 years
Yes.
may access the youth fund?
No, it's
be
between 18
35.
to 35.
18 to 35?
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
yes,
yes.
Mheshimiwa. Quickly.
If you are above that 5 or below 18, and you are a member of a youth group, but you are not an official, and the number of those below 18 and those above that 5 doesn't go above that % of the total membership, then you can penetrate the
All
youth
right.
fund.
Bwana Baraza, who should define the young person? Who should define the youth?
Well, unfortunately, it's the truth is out there that the youth universally are between 18 to 35. There's no arguing with that because physically, biologically, mentally, and even career-wise, that's what defines what a youth is. And I think the trap that the majority of Kenyan youth have fallen into is to look at the issues on a superficial level. For example, to ask, is a person who is 41 years old supposed to be managing a youth fund? I think that's beyond the real issues. And that's why Kenyan youth have always been taken round in circles because we are so concerned about numbers and figures that define our youth. It is time for us to go beyond such question and ask Mheshimiwa, because it's in terms of management of funds, in terms of management of, in terms of the process of getting into parliament, being an assistant minister, you cannot have an 18-year-old.
So being young is a state of mind from what you, not just age.
It's not just a state of mind. It's a number.
It's a number.
It's a figure that says you're 18 to 35. And that's beyond the question. The question is, all those institutions which have been mandated, both legally and socially, to take care of our youth, are they doing positive things to enable the youth of this country to grow? And that's why we get bogged down with questions of who is so old, who is doing what, and forget the major question that there are people who are 41-year-old, like Mheshimiwa Kabando here, who are sitting on a ministry of youth and who majority of the youth, in fact, are dissatisfied with the services being offered by his ministry. So that we go beyond asking him his age and ask him, Bwana Kabando, umefanyia nini vijana wa country hii?
Thank you, Barasa. Karen, do you think that the youth in this country have been defined properly, and from the definitions we are getting, who determines who a young person is?
There are many definitions of who a young person is. The Kenya National Youth Policy defines a youth as that person between the ages of 18 to 35. The African Charter says 15 to 26.
Are you okay with that as an individual?
In the Kenyan context, maybe 15 to 35 would be a good number, a good age for one to be defined as a young person. Yeah, 15 to 35, depending on what the person does, because this is the most productive age of any person in this life, any human being. So yes, I do consider 15 to 35 as the prime age for one to be called young.
Let me go back to my youthful audience, okay? The gentleman in glasses.
Yeah, I think our panelists are taking us for a ride, because most of the time you see people using that word youthful because they want to use it as an excuse to hold their offices. I think we should be very clear. The youth start from the age of 15 to 35, and we have very experienced youth in our country, so don't tell us that once you have outlived your years, you have outlived your years. Accept the facts and deal with it.
Thank you. I saw another hand. The gentleman on my left in glasses also.
To me, I think the definition is discriminative of a certain group of people with disabilities. To me, youthfulness is defined in terms of access to development. And if you do not have access to education at the right time of age, you don't have access to jobs at the right time of age, you don't have access to things that are basic to people who are quote-unquote normal, then people with disabilities are discriminated in terms of accessing to loans and stuff like that. Why? People with disabilities don't have schools, they don't go to schools at the same age, primary, secondary, or university, at the same age as people without disabilities.
So how does that link? How does that link to youthfulness?
The link is youthfulness, as Mheshimiwa Kabanda said. For example, if you have to access the youth fund, for example, you have to be a certain age. Now, you have to have cleared school, for example, you have to have had your ID. Now, if you didn't start school at the right time of the others, if you can't have access to those facilities that make you to be accessible to the things that define us as youthful or growth.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Made your point. Honorable Kabanda, you've been accused, together with the other guests, of taking Kenyans far right, at least in this discussion.
Yes, the most important thing to emphasize here are the milestones that have been covered in the way of redressing the inability of government to mainstream youth issues. And though I may not enumerate, the fresh ministry, that is the Ministry for Youth Affairs and Sports, which is barely 3 years, has initiated a number of programs. The Youth Enterprise Fund, running now into billions. We know a lot of youth have not yet accessed that money, yet we know that there are nearly 200,000 youth groups across the country that have benefited from the constituency component, and also through the financial intermediaries. We also have the constituency sports programs ongoing. The Kazi kwa Vijana has just started this week.
All right.
And therefore, there are a number of issues that have been covered. But we do accept, and consciously so, that though we have covered a lot of ground, the distance to be covered remains wider and longer. Okay. And that's why we are seeking more partnerships with the corporate world, and also more funding from Treasury, so that we can escalate our capacities.
Helen, the gentleman in the audience raised the question of accessibility. He talked about the youth who are disabled accessing resources. Can you just link that very quickly before I go into a break with the youth fund?
Yes.
Is it alive to that fact that we have youths who are actually marginalized along those levels?
I totally agree with you. And actually, that's one of the key policy areas the Youth Fund is looking at. How are we able to get even a different product for youth with disabilities who cannot make it to go to the banks themselves, who cannot be able to go to the financial institutions to get the money? And I totally agree with that. There's also the recognition that there is the empowerment of the people with disability themselves, actually trying to see, this is a product, this is an environment created by the government, how am I going to maximally use it and take full advantage of the opportunity? So you also don't have the creation of a dependent syndrome. You have to be given something, whereas it's going out there, just like any other young person, and accessing the youth fund facilities through the financial intermediaries, through the constituency portion, and through any microfinance institutions, which could be an NGO.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for that. Agenda Kenya takes a break. Keep watching. Welcome back to Agenda Kenya with me, Jason Nyantino. If you've just joined us, we are discussing the most talked about segment of the population, the youth of this country. What do they have to offer this nation? Let's hear more. My next question is from Agnes Wanjiku, who is a student. Agnes.
Okay, thank you. My question is, why is the Kenyan youth used as a tool of riot, and what can we do, what can be done to avoid this misuse?
The youth and violence. Karen, give it a go.
Young people have been used, abused, misused, and dumped. But we have allowed that to happen because no one can just come and say, I want to buy you to cause violence or do this or that without you allowing that to happen. I think for majority of the youth population, we have allowed that to happen. And we have, a number of us have said it is because of unemployment, you want to get something small for food, or you're just idle, nothing to do, so you're readily available for hire. It is that we have allowed it to happen. The moment we say no, enough is enough, remember like during the post-election violence, most of the perpetrators and victims of violence were young people. Many of the young people lost lives. Why? We
So
allowed
the young people need to say no, like the women
We
are
need
saying
to
no.
say
The
enough is
sex
enough.
boycott.
Yes, we need to say enough is enough.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, Simiyu, I've seen riots in universities. They are now burning hostels. They are no longer stoning cars. They're burning hostels. Next time, maybe they'll burn themselves. What's your take? Well, they're very violent.
The reason, the way he has asked why the youth are used as a tool for violence, you never use a tool which is not efficient. So the youth are very efficient in terms of tools for violence. They can run faster than tear gas, they can run faster than bullets. They are youthful and they are energetic. But the bigger problem is the way that the youth are manipulated by people in positions of power to be able to be channeled towards venting out anger or discontent by violence. And this happens because the youth of this country have actually realized that you can never gain anything in this country if you talk quietly. So that's why, I mean, we see it every day. Our politicians
So
keep
are you
fighting.
for that?
No.
Mr. Baraza, are you for that violence?
I am not for that violence. What I'm trying to say is that you cannot blame the youth wholesomely for having a culture of violence when the leaders themselves are a violent class.
Lot, yeah.
In terms of,
because we've seen it. Actually.
we've seen it in churches where we cannot even hold a peaceful election in a church without people fighting. So if a person has discontent among the youth, they realize that violence is the only way to be had. But all that being said and done, it is very unfortunate and it should not be happening. I think we need a mental shift of how we resolve our conflicts, not just among the youth, but in all sectors of our society to be able to create a peaceful nation.
Now, Helen, in terms of the violent nature of our youths, we've seen this happen time without number. I don't know when it will stop. Maybe wakatae vile wanawake wamekataa kwa hii mgomo. What's your take? Because it's worrying. These are the same youthful people who end up in parliament. They fight in parliament. They fight everywhere.
I think we need to do our own sex boycott as young people. But it's going back to the structural cause of why we are violent as young people. I'm a young person. And one is the issue of, is a reflection of our society. How many of us grow in a hostile family where the father knows how to beat very well the mother and the children? So you grow up knowing that is your role model, and that's what you see as a leader, and that's what you become. Secondly, is a structural problem of education, where we have mainly been focused to read for exams, and that's the only way and out of our lives. When we lose hope, when we come out and see that there are no jobs for us, when we go out in schools and realize the only thing that I'm expected to do is read and pass exams, there's the hopelessness that comes in young people. And what is happening within, unfortunately, misuse of power is where leaders come and misuse that hopelessness of young people for negative energy. And
thank you. I'll come back. Mheshimiwa, have you used young people as foot soldiers in Mukurweini? Have they fought your war?
The bedrock of my support in Mukurweini has been young people.
Have they been violent, your supporters?
They have been positive, they have been constructive, because they have been conscious. because I did not just go to join them.
So there's
I've
no
been,
violence.
I've been with them.
There's no violence
I've
in
been a youth
Mukurweini.
leader from my secondary school days to college.
Yes.
There have been not instances of violence. However, there has been a culture of isolating and condemning young people, and that culture has created...
Let's get back to Mukurweini,
yes.
Is there violence in Mukurweini? Have you been involved in violence in Mukurweini?
There has never been a single instance of violence in Mukurweini. In fact, it has been the reverse. In 2007, the cases that were reported to the police and to government were cases of victimization of young people who were engaged in a campaign to disengage with the incumbency. And therefore, I think we need to look at it widely, not in a narrow way.
So do you think the young people in this country are coming off as a reliable constituency of people? Are they reliable?
Young people are very reliable. I'm sure they are also appreciated that they have some consciousness. The only issue here is mainstreaming them to issues of development that will engage them in productive, employment, informal or formal. And that's why in the Ministry of Youth Affairs, we do have programs. They may not have gone to the deepest of the ocean or touched every hill, but there are some programs that are focused and targeted to bring young people to productive ways of life.
All right. Let's say the young people. The gentleman, I'm looking for ladies, I don't know. Yes, the lady in Buibui. Yes, you.
Vile mnavyotaka kuwa mna push blame kwa vijana, lakini mkinyosha kidole vingine vinaelekea. Ni kwa mnatutumia sana kama vijana kwenda kuvunja mahali, na kwa jina mnalotumia ni kwa tutawapatia kazi. Nifanyie hii mtapata kazi. Hiyo ni makosa. Ni kwa as much as mnataka kutupatia kazi, alafu mnatutumia kwa upande mwingine ambao zile kazi hamtatupa ambazo mtatuuzia baadaye. Na wajua kuwa hatuna pesa kama vijana, lakini mnatutumia kwa kuwa mkinifanyia kazi fulani na mimi nitakufanyia kazi fulani. It's like tit for tat. Mfanyie hivi nikufanyie hivi. Thank you.
Thank you. Another comment, the gentleman in a smart suit on my left. Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to agree with my fellow member of the audience. And I'd like to say it has been said by someone wiser than me that people who have nothing to live for will die for anything. So when youth participate in these demonstrations and in expressions of violence against the establishment or other groups, it gives them a sense of identity and they get paid out of it. So I feel that unemployment is a very big issue in this because he doesn't own anything, nothing of his will be burnt, nothing of his will be destroyed, so he might as well go ahead and participate in the demonstration.
So let me just engage you a little bit. Those youths who are violent, are you insinuating that they are ready to die for this country or they have nothing to die for this country?
Let me give a personal example.
Yes, please.
I was in the ODM wing during the 2007 elections. I was in university, and there was euphoria regarding ODM. When the presidential candidate came to Eldoret, we were marching in the streets, we were jumping, we were convincing people, walking around with these posters.
I hope you are not violent in doing that.
It was before the violence.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
we were doing all that. Even after the disputed elections, we were willing to go to the streets. But what happened is that I am thinking of a career. I have a few things.
Yes.
I'm thinking if I go and participate in that right now, my career, what I'm planning to do in life,
So violence
will come
is
to an
wrong.
end.
Violence is wrong.
No, it is wrong, without a doubt. But since I have something I was protecting, something I'm looking forward to, I would not participate in the violent demonstrations. But other people are not as fortunate as me.
All right, thanks very much. Mheshimiwa to respond to the misusing of the youth, then we roll over the debate. And I want you to say, to be very specific, I know that maybe you haven't used youth in the violent ways, but there are other politicians, your colleagues in parliament, who have done this. What's your take?
I think it is important for us as a country to accept that the culture of impunity, when we delay justice to those who are caught in corruption, those who are caught in violence, when we release people for very poor investigations, and therefore we cannot withhold prosecution for individuals who have been caught in a violent act, we have created an incentive, a culture that has enabled those who engage in violence to see an escape route because they will escape punishment. And even the Bible says, Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 11, that when the sentence of a crime is not hastened, it gives wickedness and interest in the hearts of people and in their minds to engage in similar crime.
You should have been a reverend, Mheshimiwa. You should have been a reverend. Thanks for that. Helen, the youth and the violence. I mean, it has been said that the youth are being misused and such allegations and all that. But how do we prevent the young people from being very available for this kind of engagement? Because I think that's what the problem is. And they're here. Wengine wanakataa hawajai pigana, lakini if you meet these guys out there, they're extremely energetic in the wrong way.
I like that question, and I want to use a phrase by the lady up there who said that when one finger points at others, three fingers are pointing at you. And this is a time as young people, I've been a youth activist for many years and a youth leader. And one thing we need to note is that when somebody sees your hopelessness, we'll definitely use it. And this is a time for us to decide, you know what? We have opportunities, or if there are no opportunities, it's for us to create that opportunity or to force the people in government or in parliament or our leaders at whatever level to create those opportunities for us. There are many opportunities out of that.
How do we force this?
How do you force? Good, yes, and it's a good question. I will not tell you to go on the streets. But one thing I can tell you is the accountability mechanisms, whereby for example, for the youth fund, if I can talk from the youth fund perspective.
Quickly, please.
You have the youth constituency committee at every constituency. And it's sat by youth representatives, it's sat by religious leaders, it's sat by community leaders. And CDF, for example, is a community, it's people in your own communities. How do we demand accountability of those
wait a minute,
resources?
Helen. I want to ask, Munatoka, your respective constituencies, how many of you have visited the youth fund office in your local area? How many of you have visited, just to find information?
Oh, good.
That comes to about 40%, roughly. So the other 60, don't just whine. Please, when you go back home, look for this office. Enda huko kuna mtu analipo mshahara ya explain how the youth fund works. I think that is important.
Yes.
Yes, you may proceed.
Yes.
Sorry for...
and it's a change of attitude as young people. I'm a young person, and going back to the level of where we also identify who our allies are. Even in parliament, we have people like Kabando who can speak out strongly for young people. Let's partner with them instead of defeating them, and whereas they can be our army in that parliament.
Sure.
There's also something called the social movements. It doesn't have to be hostile. But there's a way young people can come up, a collective action, and the voice being stronger instead of only one single person speaking. If young people can come and demand accountability in political parties like ODM, PNU, and the rest, as well as even hold meetings and forums with their members of parliament, can you give us indicators for the next 2 years? What are you doing in parliament and what are you going to achieve? Let young people create that change we want and create the democratic systems we want within our constituency.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Helen and the panel. We are taking another break, but before we do that, we want to know your thoughts on this question. Can the youth of this country be trusted with leadership? Send your answers to 55556. It's on your screen now. Give us your name. Tell us where you're watching us from. We are back in a moment. And remember to begin with the word agenda. Remember to begin with the word agenda on your text. Agenda Kenya comes back in a moment. Welcome back to Agenda Kenya with me, Jason Nyantino. The youth of this country, we are talking to you tonight. What do you have to offer this country? We are looking at your potential. We are looking at what you have in your bag for this nation. My next question of the evening is from Steve Mutuku, who is a freelance producer.
Now my question goes to Mheshimiwa. Why has the government really seriously neglected the youth talent, especially in arts, film, theater, and sports?
Mheshimiwa, very quickly, government policy, and I'm happy that you're from the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Very quickly, then we go to the rest of the panel.
We have not neglected. In fact, we are trying to fast track. Currently, there are 3 issues that are pending before Cabinet so that they are presented in Parliament for quick passage. One is the revived National Youth Policy. Secondly is the sports bill, and thirdly, the sport lottery that will ensure that we commercialize the sporting sector, and we know that most sports individuals are the young people.
Mheshimiwa, I've heard about the sports policy for many years.
Yes,
What's happening?
It has never been there. But if you listen
to
the presidential, if you listen,
just about to be taken to Parliament.
If you listen to the presidential speech, which is currently being debated by Parliament, one of the priority areas to be addressed by the legislature, by the House, is the passage of the sports bill.
So and very soon we're going to stop watching Manchester United.
It's actually on the menu of the Cabinet.
We watch our own.
We actually are ahead. So for reasons, we have already started. In every constituency in the Republic of Kenya, we have given 1 million Kenya shillings. It may not be much, but we have started. We also recently did commercialize.
Does everybody know that information, that there's 1 million in
those who have visited their youth officers, the 40% random assessment here.
So please go to your youth officers when you go back home.
And they need
and
you need to do this. In your respective constituencies, go see your youth officer, understand the issues of the sports, issues of the 3-4 jobs, issues for the Youth Enterprise Fund, and make serious, consistent demands to your members of Parliament. That issue that we have done is that in every constituency we have given 1 million Kenya shillings for the youth polytechnics, which have a new curricula, which is now a bridge. You can go to National Polytechnic.
So the curriculum has been improved.
Improved. And also, in every constituency, we completed this 3 weeks ago. We have given equipment worth 500,000 Kenya shillings so that those polytechnics do have equipment that will engage in diversity of skills so that we can harvest the basket of the potential among the young people.
As you finish, can you just enlighten us? What is in the curriculum for the youth polytechnics you're talking about? What has been included? Because the last time I checked, those polytechnics were teaching about carpentry, and we don't have enough trees. We have many carpenters. There are not enough trees to cut, man.
Yes. Now, thank you very much. In the new curricula, you not focus on the village polytechnics, because now they are the youth polytechnics and a bridge. You'll have a training in entrepreneurship. You'll have training in technical aspects that will allow you to engage in national polytechnics or technical colleges training, and also training that can cause you to go to sectors like engineering.
Okay, Mheshimiwa, asante sana. Karen, in terms of that question of involving the youth in other areas, arts, music, dance, you can tell us about yourself, if you are one of these lucky youths.
Yes, I'm one of these lucky youths because I took the chance to tap within myself. I am a writer, so I do write a lot.
What do you write?
I write articles about the media. I critique the media, what the media does and all that stuff.
So I expect an article about Agenda Kenya anytime.
Yes.
All right, that's great.
But one key thing that I've noted is that in the recent past, young people all over the country have begun organizing themselves in groups to provide their own solutions, to create opportunities for themselves. Look, for example, in Korogosho, there's so much poverty there and information does not reach the slums very well. Young people came up together, they are interested in arts, in radio presentation and all that stuff. And they came together, they had the idea, and they went to donors and looked for funds, fundraised. They were able to get equipment, even from the community amongst themselves. There are people who, for example, donated seats, tables, and a computer, all that. And right now, they're successfully running the radio station. In Mombasa, for example, another group of young people is trying to rehabilitate their fellow young people from drug abuse and use. So it is
nice
about
is going on.
Yeah, something nice is going on. So it is about us young people coming out of our comfort zones and looking for opportunities and taking the opportunities. For example, in June this year, the fiber optic cable will be going live in Kenya. That is an opportunity for young people, massive jobs. It has potential for creating massive jobs.
Right.
So young people, I think we need to just come together and be aggressive enough. Let us not wait for anybody to come and create solutions for us. Let us go out and find our own solutions.
Thanks. You should vie for going to Parliament, Karen. Anyway, Simiyu Barasa, you're a filmmaker. Are there incentives in Kenya? What do you do? Tell us what you do very quickly. Well, whether government that Honorable is talking about, have they helped you, those incentives talking about?
I started off as in the theater, then I became a scriptwriter. I've written basically for almost all the TV dramas that you have, Makutano Junction, Tairi High, Wingu la Moto, Melody Makers. And the thing I can say...
There are so many.
The thing I can say... The thing that I can say is that for us, the youth, we should get beyond this strategy of always whining about something, because, and that's what helps people like Mr. Kabando here to get away with a lot of things, yeah? Because every time we are asking about what is the policy on a certain issue, but the reality is no government policy will create the creativity in your brain. The question we should be asking, for example, and Mr. Kabando's ministry should not be taking credit for these things, is that the youth, Genga Music did not need a youth policy, did not need the Ministry of Youth. These are people who sat down and creatively started their industry. So the thing like Mr. Kabando is talking about, the initiatives that they've had in the government, and all of these initiatives are well framed in nice policy papers.
Are there some incentives you expect from government in terms of film? Because the other day I saw Kimani Maruge's movie being shot in South Africa, and they were saying there are no incentives in Kenya, we have to take it down south. Is that something that you like as a filmmaker?
First and foremost, I'd like to say that there are lots of activities going on in terms of providing incentives, because there's been some reduction in terms of equipment costs. They've also been some cancellation of some few licenses, not with the Ministry of Youth. It's been done via Kenya Film Commission petitioning some government agencies. But to quickly go back to Mr. Kabando and the way he's saying the policies that they have. The problem with the Ministry of Youth is that it has nice policies, but it does not interact with other ministries. For example, when he talks about the Kazi kwa Vijana initiative, you see that Nakuru was given 30 million to create 1,400 jobs for the youth in Nakuru. And yet, at the same time, it is given 40 million to do street lighting. So it means street lighting is more important than creating jobs for the
That's crazy.
Just another example.
You will respond.
Just another example for Bwana Kabando. There was this thing they say that kazi poa. I mean, they say that vijanas who are doing juakali work, juakali is not nice enough. Kazi poa sounds more kijanaish. But on the same level, they say that 25% of all government furniture should be sourced from the juakali carpenters. And I've not visited any government office that has actually bought 25% of its furniture from the local juakali person on the street.
Thank you. So, let Mheshimiwa respond to that, especially about Nakuru.
I think it's important
Very
for the
quickly.
youth to accept that creativity will be self-generated and that government does exist to create facilitation and platform for you to take advantage. He is wrong on the aspect of Kazi kwa Vijana. Kazi kwa Vijana program amounting to 15 billion Kenya shillings, which is supposed to go up to August, isn't meant to stop all other development activities. It is not supposed to stop street lighting, universal free primary education. Is not supposed to cut the budget.
It's a parallel project.
It's a parallel project, and actually is a quick, creative intervention.
I'll cut you short, Mheshimiwa. Let me go to my audience. There are burning issues. The lady at the back in glasses.
Okay, thank you. No, I believe that the youth are doing something, but now we have the issue with the local authority. I get a deni and I'm supposed to pay back, and after I set up my business, they come in, demolish it. Mheshimiwa, you need to tell us, what can we do with this? The good kind of networking with the local authority for us youth to progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Another local authorities. The lady on my third row in the middle here. Yes.
Okay, another challenge we are having as a youth. We collect ourselves, we want to do something for us. And then you find that the system which is there is not youth-friendly. We don't have the space to speak. For example, we've even witnessed in the KU strike. They initially aired out their issues, but they were not heard. They had to go, use violence for them to be heard. So we also don't have a safe space. We don't have youth-friendly services.
Thank you. I'll take my last, the lady on my extreme. I'm taking the ladies because they've been left out. I don't want to marginalize them here. Extreme right.
I'm an actress, and I believe that if the government can support sports and provide that money for people to start on sports, why can't they do that for actress, or if you want to come up with a film? Because you concentrate so much on the carpenters, the other jobs and things. You should also recognize other talents without sidelining them.
Thank you very much. Helen, please give us a way forward. You've heard what the young Kenyans are saying.
Yeah. One thing I would like to inform the youth, first, information is power, you all know that. And if you know what is available, the services available, opportunities available, it simplifies a lot. Because like the Youth Fund, it's supposed to facilitate any kind of entrepreneurship, be it on arts, be it on film, be it on Jua Kali, making things.
From your analysis,
yes.
Have you funded initiatives on the line of arts and culture?
Yes, actually the people doing all the documentaries of the Youth Fund and doing all the TV production for the Youth Fund are two twins who are funded by the Youth Fund. So we actually did use the youth who are doing businesses from the Youth Fund. The other thing I need to let you know, out of the Youth Fund, we are negotiating on a policy where all ministry, 10% of all their procurement goes to young people. So all the policies within all the ministry are able to be conducive for young people. So that when their procurement, for example, making roads, 10% of that should go to young people. But kazi kwa vijana, to also note, it's for public works where the energy, the initiative is mainly to get, instead of using machinery to create roads and the rest.
But is that all that the youth can offer? Just manual
No, not
work?
all. That's why he said it's a complementary and a short-term measure to be able to fill in. I'm not involved in the kazi kwa vijana, but it's something I went out to find out.
So in terms of long-term?
Long-term, you have the Youth Fund, which is supposed to facilitate the various initiatives. You have other projects by other international organizations.
I have a problem with the Youth Fund because it's more limited to entrepreneurship only. Is it everybody who can run a business?
That is very good.
There are other talents here.
Good question. Good question, why the Youth Fund? And
very
it's
quickly,
good
I don't have time.
The good question you have raised is, the Youth Fund is not a youth fund for everybody. It's for entrepreneurs. And the reason it was done that was a problem young people raised and said, we are not accessing capital because every time we go to the banks, there's no, you are expected to go with a salary slip, with collateral. And you saw, I don't know whether most of you saw the Kangemi story. I don't know whether, who knows the Kangemi story of young people?
Just
You're here.
Yeah.
Let me give you a good example. These young people went out in Kangemi, borrowed 50,000 from the Youth Fund, started the toilets in the Kangemi markets, if I'm correct. And then they were able to repay that money. They came and said, we would like more money. They got 460,000. Started creating businesses among themselves.
They have been successful.
They have been successful through the Youth
All right,
Fund.
thank you. I'll cut you short. Sorry, I don't have time. That is how we close the curtains for this week's edition of Agenda Kenya. I thank my panel. I thank my audience for that moving debate. Before we leave you, I want to know your thoughts on this question. Can the youth in Kenya be trusted with leadership? Send your answers to 5556. It is on your screen now. Give us your name, tell us where you're watching us from, and remember to begin with the word agenda. And as we leave you, the young people out there, now is the time, rise to the occasion and make a difference. See you next week. Good night.